Lincoln settled down after the first drive or so, made some nice throws. But I thought Julian, for the most part, early on was in rhythm and moved the team down the field for a couple touchdowns, which was good. Made some nice throws. There's certainly a lot to grow from, and this is why we did this. You can see it was a fairly significant emphasis on throwing the ball to see how the quarterbacks were going to respond. And so we'll use this as another evaluation tool because right from the jump, from when we got off the bus to when we just finished there, I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we did the spring game. I wasn't sure, but it was definitely the right thing to do. I wish we could have stayed out there for another 4 hours and got these reps and get these guys some work. On defense, the guys were very, very vanilla. You can see it was really 2 coverages all day in one front, which is not what we saw all spring. But I felt like for the most part we got a chance to have some film to evaluate, see how the quarterbacks handle themselves in front of the crowd, and kind of go from there and build from it. So what we'll do next week is we have our post-spring evaluations for all guys and go through and figure out what they did well, what they need to improve on as we head into the summer. I wish I could put my finger on it. There was good days, there was bad days, there was somewhere in between, and I think it's just a matter of playing the game. And that's why I think we've talked about this spring. As the spring's gone on, I've just realized that at all positions, but most importantly at quarterback, we have to continue to play 11-on-11 football. And you can see the growth. You saw some growth even in the short amount of time that you guys were able to watch some of the practice this spring. We have the ability to watch them on a daily basis, see them grow. And I wish I could say, hey, we need to get better at like 1, 2, and 3, but I know we just need to play football with these guys. We're young. We have a lot to work on, but I will say there was growth today.
Is that something we look for?
I think we got to take a hard look at it. Yeah, I don't think I have the answer right now, but we got to look at it. It seemed to me like there was just a lot of knockback on the offensive side of the ball here, but then again, I don't want to make any adjustments, so I watched the film.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean that's a part of it. When you're not 6'4" like Will or Dwayne was, or Steven 6'3" the way that Justin and CJ were. Kyle was about 6'3", so. What does that mean? Well, you're in the trees, you have to find passing lanes. Does it affect how we call plays? Not really. I mean, there's certainly things that is easier to do than others, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of guys his stature that are playing, in the NFL, and I played a lot of high level of college football, so he's certainly tall enough, but you need to get your elbow up, you need to play big. I think that's, what does that really mean? We could probably talk about it for an hour, but when you're not 6'4", you got to play big, and that means your elbows are going to be above your shoulder. You have to see, the passing lanes, and all those things are important. So, we're not allowed to get tip balls. Like that's part of the deal when you're a younger a smaller quarterback. So, I think he's done a better job with his body. I think he's moving better. So that's all good. But again, it goes back to 11-on-11 football, not 7-on-7, not routes on air. That's not football. And again, I don't want to get into this, but this is like something that's just like front and center in my mind, is that when you play basketball, baseball, lacrosse, you're playing like 7 games on a weekend. These guys play like 12 to 13 games a year of 11-on-11 padded live football. That's it. So, playing at 7-on-7, that's great. That's not football. The throws that you're making aren't real because there's a 6'5" tackle and a guy over here that's trying to rip your head off. So, the more we can create those environments for our guys, the more they'll figure it out. And good athletes like Lincoln and Julian and Tavian, they figure it out over time. You just have to continue to find ways to get out there. So I wish we had 15 more practices in the spring to get out there and learn and grow from. I think there has been progress made, and we still got to grow, we got to build. I remember where Paris was that third year when he made that jump to left tackle. I felt like coming out of the spring, I was like, man, he's like 2 years away, and he ends up being the first pick in the draft. So there's still some ground we made up here this summer. I think, again, our guys have done a good job of, like we talked about, having a primary position and a secondary position. So you're seeing some guys move around. And so I think, we're going to have what we need there eventually. We'll probably end up having 4 tackles. And that's what we need to make it through a season. So, I think we'll figure that out in the postseason or the post-spring meetings and figure out what to work on. It's not a finished product yet for sure. But again, I feel like those guys have made strides. They've gotten better. And in the good-on-good situations that we've seen this spring, they've really competed. Well, we know who our first opponent is, so we know we have to hit the ground running. We don't have the luxury of kind of easing into the season. Not that that's even really the case. I shouldn't say that, but you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, the margin for error, I guess, is the best way to look at it. I think the first thing you notice about this team is they compete, they're competitive, they're edgy. I think, you know, once you get past some of the guys who have played football here with the ones, it quickly gets inexperienced fast. But even the guys who are going to be starters next year, they haven't played a lot of football as starters. They played football, but not as starters. That's a whole different deal. I mean, you have to produce regularly. You have to be able to handle an increased number of snaps at a high level. It's a whole different deal. And so, you know, because, you know, we lost talent, but more importantly, we lost experience. We're still talented, but we lost the experience. And every time you go out there, you're either remembering or you're learning. We have a lot of guys learning right now. We do. And so we got to just accelerate that learning process and, you know, figure out what that plan is here this summer and how we do that. Our off-season program is still going to be, you know, as hard as ever. And then as we get into preseason, we got to do a great job of making sure, again, we're creating as many game situations as possible of the style of defense that we're seeing today. So, you know, those guys had to take on a little double teams. But I thought we got to the second level pretty well. I think you know, Tyler and Marcus and Charlie, those guys, all three of them have done a great job. You know, it's the first time we ever had like 3 guys involved with the offensive line. Because of the new rule with unlimited coaches, it's allowed them to attack that room. And when you think about 5 guys on the field at once, almost 20 guys in a room, it makes sense. And I think that they feel like they're getting better. The guys who returned, you know, Luke and Carson and Tegra and those guys, I think they're feeling more and more comfortable with what we're doing. Again, we'll have to assess all that and figure out exactly what the evaluation is. That'll all be explained to them during the post-spring. But good to have guys that have played, you know, and they obviously played good enough for to win a national championship last year. So that's good, but that's not our expectations. Our expectations that these guys are All-Americans and first-rounders. So that's why they're here. And that's what they want to be. I think the quarterbacks would tell you that, you know, I have conversations with them on a daily basis, especially when they make mistakes in practice. But it's our job and it's my job to make sure that they understand how hard it is to be the quarterback at Ohio State and the expectations. You are not allowed to lose a game. You're not allowed to have a bad day. And so it's really, really hard. That's just the way it is. But as we know, the rewards are endless. And, you know, Will's a great example of that. CJ's a great example of that. You know, you go through the list. But and so, you know, I think the thing for Julian is, you know, he's realized he's had some good days. He's had some days he's learning from. But a big trait of great quarterbacks is they're resilient. They keep coming back and they keep learning. If you keep making the same mistake over and over again, not good. So, but I think all the guys have been that way this spring. So, but good to see him respond the way he did and rebound from a couple of practices. Yeah, there's no question. You know, not just the talent, it's the experience. You know, these guys are grown men, and in our recruiting process, we evaluate who the players are in terms of their talent, but then we quickly evaluate who they are as young men. And we try to bring in mature young men because, you know, when you're here at Ohio State, you know, you're held to a higher standard. You know, you got to sit up a little straighter. You got to look people in the eye. You got to make great decisions, and so that's important. And you know, these guys came in that way, but they came in as young men, and now they're men, and you just see them, and you just makes you smile. Not only are they going to be great football players in the NFL, but they're going to be great citizens, great ambassadors of Ohio State, great husbands, great dads, and they're champions. So, yeah, it puts a smile on your face when you see it.